Hi everybody, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan and I am just one reader, and you are watching my 26th birthday special video. So I am turning 26 in October 9 and I wanted to make some type of video to celebrate it, and you guys gave me a bunch of ideas and I've decided to do the 26 books that have made me as a reader by age 26. So I have 3 disclaimers before I get started with the actual books themselves. First disclaimer, this video of course is going to be long because I'm going to talk about 26 books or series, so it's a long list. So I'm going to split this into 2 parts, so you will see the first half of the list in this video and then the rest of the books will go on a second video. Disclaimer number 2, this is a list of the books that have influenced me as a reader. They are not necessarily my favorite books of all time. It's a different issue. Although, of course, some of the books that I will mention are some of my favorite books of all time, but it's not necessarily always the case. And disclaimer number 3, I have arranged these books in a somewhat precise chronological order, in the order in which I read them in my life. So let's just get going with the first book that I ever owned. Book number 1 is Mi Osito. This is a book that my parents gave me as a birthday present when I turned 2 years old. So I've been with this for my entire life and I am never parting with it. It's just a very cool reminder of maybe a wish or desire that my parents must have had for me to become a reader, I guess, unconsciously or somewhat consciously. This is a story in which I am a bear and I go on whimsical, magical adventures, and it's just a very cool reminder of how I started my life pretty much as a reader. As a reader to be. Book number 2 is of course the Harry Potter series. For the first 7 years of my life, I had hated reading. I thought the idea of reading and people who read was the most insanely boring and pointless thing ever. But then my parents persuaded me. They convinced me to read the first book in the Harry Potter series. They very politely talked to me and they said, wouldn't you at least please give it a go, try it out? And of course, how do you say no to a parent who is asking so nicely? So of course I said yes, and I was kind of resistant and reluctant at first, but then I remember I just fell in love, and what can I say? The rest is history. Coming in at number 3 is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. I remember that I read these compulsively like they were cocaine or something. And I remember enjoying these stories for how charming they were, and you know, the settings, the characters and everything, and how each book in the series to me felt like dipping in and out of a specific part of the universe. So it felt like truly exploring a different world. Coming in at number 4 is A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I remember that I was just constantly surprised and constantly in awe that someone, like an actual human person, was writing these books, because how could someone write in such a clever way, with such humor, and how could I be enjoying this tragedies, this series of tragic, unfortunate events so much? I just loved how sadistic these books were and how dark and mean-spirited the characters were, and you know how these awful things kept happening to them, but at the same time it was such an enjoyable ride and very informative. I learned a lot of things reading these books. Yeah, it's just wicked fun. Book number 5 is The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. This is what I consider to be my favorite book of all time. So whenever somebody asks me, what's your favorite book of all time, Juan? This is my go-to answer. I am in love with this book. I really feel this is, to me, what perfection looks like in book format, because it just has everything for someone like me. It is imaginative, it is wildly creative, it is the best example of fantasy, and I love how complex the themes are and the way that he plays with the storytelling in the book, and it becomes a very meta experience. It's a book within a book, within a book, within a book, and you become sort of a participant in the story, not just a spectator. It's an amazing experience, and I also think that this will always be my favorite book because the main protagonist, Bastian Balthazar Bucks, is pretty much me. I mean, I don't think I've ever read or come across a literary character or a character in any book that resembles me so very much. Coming in at number 6 is the Artemis Fowl series, a series that I really wish more people would read. I was just in love with this universe and with these characters. Artemis Fowl himself, as a character, is the most intelligent, sophisticated, sly, sleek, snarky, cool, elegant character that you could ever find in a book like this. These books are gems and people are not reading them. I just found out that Disney is making a movie out of the first 2 books in the series, so hopefully that will get people into reading them. Coming in at number 7 is none other than the DaVinci Code by Dan Brown. I was kind of a precocious reader because I read this when I was 10 or 11. My grandmother was reading it and she was really enjoying it, so as soon as she finished it, she gave her copy to me, and it was just an experience that completely blew me away. I had never really felt the adrenaline and the physiological need to know what would happen in the story. This was pretty much just crack. Coming in at number 8 is The Secret of Platform 13 by Eva Ibbotson, and I think what makes this book and this author stand out as one of my favorite books and authors of all time is that the story is just fun and wildly imaginative. It's just a good fantasy adventure story, but on top of that, she has a very particular British kind of sense of humor, and it's just the perfect combination. Coming in at number 9 is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This was the first Gaiman that I ever read. I have read a lot more now, and I think my favorite would be The Ocean at the End of the Lane, but I still think this is one of the books that has influenced me the most. It was the first one that I read. It was the first urban fantasy that I ever read, and I was just blown away with the weird combination or the weird sort of juxtaposition of really mundane elements and then the weird, bizarre, maddening things that were happening. I love the way that he played with humor and with comedy and with violence at the same time, and you know, the book is filled with a lot of darkness and levity at the same time, and also of course the setting that he creates and how he plays with this idea of London above and London below. I think that's one of my favorite things that I have ever read. Coming in at number 10 is the Sally Lockhart series by Philip Pullman. This is a quartet, so 4 books. These are Victorian thrillers. I read them in a moment in life when they were just everything to me. I really recommend you try this series if you haven't. I think the thriller aspect of these books is absolutely fabulous, but my favorite thing in these books is the writing style. Philip Pullman is one of my favorite authors because of his style and also the characters. There's a very beautiful friendship between the main protagonists, and what I really loved when I read these for the first time was that I think it was the first time that I read a story that, you know, the protagonists were adults. So I just loved the idea of reading about really cool adult people doing amazing stuff. Coming in at number 11 is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This was one of the first books by Stephen King that I read, and it is still my favorite to this day. I love the combination of the very creepy atmosphere, the very the great sense of doom that is present throughout the novel, and also how literary it was. I mean, looking back on it, it is filled with very human themes and, you know, stuff that really makes me think about adulthood and childhood, and looking back on your childhood. This is a book that I always say that I want to reread, but it always makes me very apprehensive to feel that maybe going back I will not enjoy it as much. So I just kind of idealize it instead. Coming in at number 12 is my favorite trilogy of all time, His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. What can I say about this trilogy that I haven't said before, or that wouldn't take an hour to say? This book is, again, perfection to me. It has literally everything that I want in a book, even now as an adult. It has of course, the enjoyable reading experience, the adventurous, fast-paced plot. It has the mysterious, lifelike, likable and unlikable characters. It has this adrenaline. It has this urgency. It has an amazing fantasy system and different, it's just great in terms of world building and creating these parallel universes, and the artifacts. Oh my god, I'm just getting excited just thinking about it. But on top of all of that, it has this, of course, really important message, philosophical messages and religious or anti-religious messages, which are really important to me because, as you probably already know, because I think I've mentioned it before, I am an atheist. I was raised Catholic, but I never really bought the whole idea of religion. I sort of just accepted it as, part of my education, but it was never truly mine. It was never truly a conviction. I never felt the need to believe in a greater power or anything, and certainly not the God that was provided by Catholicism to me. So I just never really believed in God or in anything like that. And reading these books just really validated me. And yeah, I think these books are just really important. And I think this will be a work of literature that will transcend its time and that will be important forever. It certainly will be for me. Coming in at number 13 is a work of nonfiction, Harry, A History by Melissa Anelli. This is a wonderful book about the Harry Potter phenomenon, the fandom, the cultural explosion that happened with Harry Potter and because of Harry Potter. Of course, I felt very validated when I read this. I also felt like I belonged to something that was far bigger and far greater than just me. It was a wonderful reading experience. It made me feel all warm inside. Sometimes when I was growing up, particularly when I was reading the Harry Potter books and getting really excited and obsessed with them, I just felt a little bit lonely because a lot of people here just weren't like me, and I didn't share, or I didn't really have a lot in common with the people that were surrounding me. So reading this type of books opened up a universe for me and made me realize, baby, you're not alone, 'cause you're here with me. And if you are a true Harry Potter fan, you know where that song comes from. Okay guys, so I think I'm gonna cut the video here. So if you want to continue watching this list of the 26 most influential and important books that I've read in my life, continue watching this second part of the video.